Hello and welcome to another edition of Maximum Growth Live. I'm one of your hosts, Jay Ruane, CEO of FirmFlex, your social media marketing agency for lawyers, as well as managing partner of Ruane Attorneys, a criminal defense and civil rights firm here in the great state of Connecticut. As you can see behind me, the leaves are off the tree. It is autumn. We are getting chillier. Down there in DC, he's got a little better weather. My friend Seth Price. Seth is the founder and managing partner of Price Benowitz, a DC, Maryland, Virginia, and South Carolina juggernaut law firm, soon to be in Boise, Idaho, as well as one of the creators, I guess you would call it, of Blue Shark Digital. Along his mind, David Brenton's mind, you built this juggernaut SEO for law firms operation there, and you've got one of your new clients sitting right here. So as I do with every show, I want to say good afternoon, Seth. And how are you doing this week?
But there's some great news. We've had some killer legal victories, a big med-mal or wrongful death settlement. We had a rape trial win. We had a family law, pulled a rabbit out of a hat and reversed somebody who had no visitation to joint with a tiebreaker on legal. So we've had some really great stuff as we've brought on our firm administrator, which has been awesome. You're sort of finding out where the deferred maintenance is from that period when we didn't have somebody. And, good in that there's areas to improve, but frustrating when you see opportunities missed.
Yeah, I mean, we're still coming out of COVID, and I hate to use this as a crutch, but, a lot of us, even coming out, I think, are in a situation where whatever our firms look like now is not what it looked like, 2 years ago today. And I think a lot of us are, at a point where we know changes have been made. We know those changes are permanent, but we may not have actually embraced the permanency of those changes. And that's actually one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about. One of the things I was doing during COVID, and I've missed it, or I haven't been doing it the last, say, 4, 5, 6 months, is I was doing a weekly video update, just sort of here's where we're going, and I would film a little video, and then I would just push it out to everybody on YouTube, say, hey, here's the weekly update, here's what's going on. So what I decided to do over the next last week, and I'm putting into place, is on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I'm going to hold a State of the Union. And I'm going to sort of say, here's where we are, here's where we're going, here's what changes are permanent, here's what we're trying to get back to, for the stuff we're trying to get back to. Here are our investments for 2022 and where we'd like the firm to be. And sort of just as we enter the last month of the year, while everyone's going around and say, hey, look, this is where we're going. Come on aboard. We've got all this overseas talent that are anxious to feel part of our organization, and I think they do, and they're doing a great job. So I think that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing, and I'm wondering if you do anything sort of similar, where you get the whole office together and say, hey, here's where we're at, and here's where we're going.
It's funny. I came out of big law before I started the law firm, my first few years out of law school, and I hated the large meetings. They seemed goofy, artificial, not relevant to the people there. And so I've always minimized from speeches at holiday parties all the way down. I think that as the firm has grown, we probably have not put as much back as we should have. There's a reason that you do these pieces, and I see. And so we've added in holiday party speech, thanking people, always dangerous if you leave somebody out. I made that mistake. And then our new ops director is encouraging me to do a all hands on deck state of the firm, similar to what you're talking about, right before the holiday party. And I think that's exactly acknowledging that there is a new normal. We appreciate people's efforts getting us through this, and that we need to sort of recalibrate for this period going forward. And it's tough. I mean, part of the reason that, because I have all these different groups, I hate having speeches which aren't relevant to different people. Something I want to talk to you about later in the show, about holding meetings in
Well,
general. And
let's get
how do
into
you
that
make
right now. I think
okay,
this
okay.
is where I sort of want to go to it because I have this thought about the State of the Union because I've gotten some feedback. We have a practice group that has this weekly meeting, and the weekly meeting frustrates 80% of the people in it. 20% of the people love it because they can sort of hold court, discuss every little thing under the sun, and really hear themselves talk. And 80% of the people, and I sat in on one of these and I haven't been back because I couldn't stand it, um, are saying this is a colossal waste of time. But for the two people who love it, it keeps them engaged. We still need to do some sort of meeting of this group to sort of make sure we're all rowing in the same direction from a practice group standpoint. Have you ever kind of come into a situation where or dealt with this thing where more than 50% of the people are like, this is a waste of my time, I have other stuff I could be doing, but the people who get it really love it and don't want to let go?
Well, look, I just had an incident myself where I wasn't following my own advice. I had sort of, with my biz dev team at Blue Shark, was getting into the weeds, and there were team members that needed that ability to breathe. And as you know, get to the facts. If they
Right.
don't know Dragnet, but it was like, what are the facts, man? What are the facts? And it's just the facts. And so I was not good with some of these people, and it came back. I was like, I wasn't happy, and it turned out, shockingly, they were not happy with how I was handling that. So two things: one, removing myself. It sounds like you're not in that meeting, but second, redesigning it so that there are people, particularly in the remote workforce, that need that interpersonal piece more so than when they're in the office. They can suck up somebody's time at the coffee bar. You know what I mean? They
Right.
can have somebody come in their office and close the door, but when they're sitting at home away from everybody else, that I think that is needed. And it's so funny because, in my mind, I start going to efficiencies. I'm like, okay, can it be an AI bot that asks, that takes their feedback? Can we, clearly it shouldn't be me because it's not being received well. That's, message received, noted, and will action. So, okay, I shouldn't be part of it if I'm not going to receive it well. It sounds like you just removed yourself from it. You can have a mid-level manager run this, but you also don't want to anger the people who are listening to it. And I think it sets a bad tone and precedent when people are like, what I'm told by myself, oh, don't worry, I'll just put them on mute and do other work. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not good. But that was the Band-Aid to me being impatient. So what's the next step? The next step is, okay, I would like, this is sort of, again, dovetails to what we talked about in previous shows. If there are times where people need that cathartic piece, and it really is one way, it's not like they need Jay Ruane, because I think what you're talking about is somebody who's needs that ability to flex. Should we bring our international team members in to who, the ones that are stars out of that group, to sort of do some of this huddling so that at least the time being used to extract that information, is at a lower dollar figure. I mean, some people may think, wow, how could you be so, you handle it this way? But we've sort of experimented, particularly at Blue Shark, with more one-on-ones with team members rather than this team meeting, because I think the thing that I've discovered is when you do a team meeting, if you're a sharer, you want to contribute, even if there's not a piece for you to share. There are points where it's information going out. Now, you do definitely want the touchy-feely part, which is how's your week, how's this going, all of that. But I think sometimes that gets lost. And if you have that in place with a proper place to channel it, rather than somebody going into the minutia of their caseload or of their work on the marketing team, like they're looking for a reason to contribute where it's not appropriate. But if you give the feedback, where some people do a great job, where you walk around and say, what's one great thing that inspired you this week? What are you grateful for? Whatever it is, not my normal style, but by putting that in place, you could get relevant feedback from these people rather than the feeling that they need to contribute something. Your thoughts?
It's interesting. As you're talking, I'm thinking about that show Billions, where they have Wendy there, who's there to sort of pull people off the floor, have those one-on-ones, get them in the right mindset, get them back out on the floor doing what they're doing. There is a segment of the population I think, that just has a need to talk. And as someone who's not part of that population, it frustrates the hell out of me because I can't stand to do that sort of just verbal diarrhea about every little thing. And I think it impacts my ability to be an effective leader because I'm not interested in that stuff. Whereas I think an effective leader is willing to go there with those people. And it's one of my faults that I'm trying
Or
to
they
work on.
set. I think you're being a little harsh on yourself. I think the question is, especially at your scale, if there's somebody knowing that's not your skill set, you're not your specialty, putting somebody between you and there, and what I found with this very same person I may have had an issue with in a group setting where I feel that their responses are not germane. When I speak one-on-one with them, it's relevant and purposeful, but there's a group dynamic that kicks in where I feel like they have to contribute and share because that's what's being done. And that's where that for me, my own mishigas is dealing with that. So two things: light bulb went off, said, hey, you're too far in the weeds. I pulled myself out of most of the weeds. I left myself in one because there was not a system set up there. Okay, elevate. First problem solved. Second, give them that opportunity. But I think going back to these people, yes, you don't care about what's in the weeds and the minutia, but my guess is you could still have very relevant high-level conversations one-on-one that wouldn't be disturbing to you. It's just the group dynamic where they feel like they need to do this dump, which is less valuable to you and frustrates you, and you need to get somebody between you and them.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just I don't need to hear about all that stuff. I have identified there are people on my team who like to hear their own voice, and and that's not unique to lawyers, but I think there's a lot of lawyers out there that are like that, and it can become an incredible time suck. And as you're scaling, as you're growing your firm, you need to identify those situations because you don't want to lose an hour of productivity every week when your time is precious. And it's something that I think everybody in this audience needs to consider: is how do you run your meetings? What type of meetings are appropriate? Knowing the personalities of your players is also critical because you have to. Somewhat being a good leader is giving them what they need to feel part of the team and bought in. And I don't know if for me, it'd be great if I had an AI bot that would answer me those questions if I needed to talk to them. But for other people, they would find that wholly impersonal and that type of thing. And I know you're being facetious, but it's a delicate line that we have as owners that we're trying to sort of figure out how to get the best out of our team members. And it's a lot more complicated as you go from a team of you plus one, then you plus three, then you plus seven, then 17, then 40. I mean, I sat down last night in preparation for my State of the Union and I did an org chart. And I mean, I was blown away by the size of my org chart. And I'm like, I guess I do have a lot of people in a lot of different positions. And I have open slots in my org chart for people that I need to bring on that I've identified, and I just haven't filled those slots yet. And it's a lot to think that if every single one of these people feels the ability and then the need to report to me, I mean, I wouldn't get anything else done. I mean, it would just eat up an entire week every week.
Right. And then look, and then it wouldn't be an org chart. It'd be just everything going
Right.
straight to you. So look, if it's set up look, we had Vern Harnish on the show, a few months back, and he talked about those 7-minute morning huddles. I think part of it is, what is the defined time? When
Yeah.
there's a 30-minute slot and somebody is, who's working remotely, that's their interpersonal contact for the day, very different than we have 7 minutes. We got to get out of here. And it was, look, we've talked to our sales consultant from Sandler, and, what are those things people want to do? A play-by-play. You get like personality. I remember my dating days. There was a dating type I would get, women who wanted to tell you everything that happened to them. It was like I put it as a type during my dating days, something that I didn't love, which was a play-by-play of their perspective of things that happened, which were in the weeds. Not that you weren't interested in things that they were that happened in their day, but you weren't getting, this is what happened to me. It was the entire setup of the call to set up the coffee, the trip to the coffee, getting to the coffee, the interpersonal angst at the coffee versus like, I had coffee with so-and-so today, she told me she's pregnant, whatever it was. But the
Right.
idea that you're getting this minutia that is not, and again, in the business sense, one thing, in your personal sense, you should be with somebody who you sync with and you talk to, and that brings you joy and that you want to understand and respect. But on the business sense, there's definitely too much detail. And the question is, but as you're saying, as you started the conversation, when somebody if that's their thing and they like it, you don't want to take it away from them. Bot is
Right.
probably too strong, but we're doing these, limiting our team meetings to weekly and then having individual one-on-ones within the week. That does a little bit of good in that it's easier to control a one-on-one conversation. The next question is, if we identify people that need the ability to literally, this is not, you don't need it from a business point of view, but they need it from a cathartic point of view. Can we find a way? Definitely not you. The question is, could we at some point have a international manager at $7 to $10 an hour who's able to extract that and make them feel heard in a meaningful way? Part of the reason I like to move away from VAs and into team members, because as we've seen with other people, we had somebody on who had the international immigration practice, and they had VAs all over the world. As we start to look at that, your cost of letting somebody have that benefit is a lot less than if it's a $50 an hour manager domestically.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And it begs the question: should you be doing these deep personality tests before you hire, and then should you follow up with them after they've been with you for a few years? And my jury is sort of out still about these personality tests. I know there are people who say, once your personality is what it is, it's set for life type of thing. But I don't necessarily believe that, because I know who I was at 25 is not who I am at 49.
No argument. That's a whole nother segment. Maybe we'll
Yeah.
get that on next week or a week after. But what to me, it's more than that, because we are in such a tight job market. This is the frustration of the business owner. I wish that I could take those personality tests, and obviously red flag or something maniacal you want out. But there's going to be good and bad in every hire. And for me, if I can find somebody who has the experience I'm looking for, fits the culture and personality of the firm generally, and is going to show up for a price point that is within our budget. Like, I don't always have the wherewithal to say, well, they're in the wrong quadrant of that personality test. I mean, it's better to know what they are so you can work with it together. And I think that's where you're going. But that's the frustration of this current job market, is that we don't always have the luxury of picking and choosing, that people, we have less choices. And when we find somebody who hits all the other parameters, I don't say we're stuck with that, but that's going to be who we dance with, even if there are things that the personality tests tell us that are not ideal.
All right, cool. All right, so I mean, I don't think we have an answer to this question that we posed at the top of the show. But what I'd like to do now is I'd like to take a quick break here from our sponsors, and when we come back, something came up in one of the forums about scholarship links and the value of those, and I think it's something that's important for us to talk about. So why don't we do this? Why don't we take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about scholarship links. I know there's one other topic that you wanted to discuss, so let's do
Well, I
that.
think it's just a question of staffing and how we should.
Oh, yeah.
Are we overstaffed? Like, how do you, are you overstaffing? Do you have just enough people, et cetera? We'll hopefully get to that if we have time.
Awesome. All right, folks, we'll be right back with more Maximum Growth Live. And we're back, Seth, with more Max Growth Live. And the question I have for you, and something that's come up a bunch, is how staffed should we be? I mean, as a law firm, we have a tendency to just hire when it's painful. when we can't get it to the next level. Whereas, no one would run a restaurant. We come back to this, but it's also a service business. You wouldn't want a restaurant with having the same guy be the busboy, the maitre d', the waiter, and the sous chef, right? But we tend to not overstaff, and I'm wondering if that's something that's holding us back.
Well, look, I mean, look at restaurants, and restaurants are suffering right now. When I was a waiter, I'm dating myself, this is late 80s, I remember that they would have a chart of available waiters, and you were always wanting more shifts. A well-run restaurant was overstaffed, knowing that no one person, if somebody was pissed at the restaurant, fine, go somewhere else. You weren't captive to anybody. Right now, my guess is restaurants are the other way, where they don't have they don't have any excess. And I think as a law firm owner, we have similar issues. I've seen with my intake group recently, we did not make an adjustment for some of our domestic team members and moving them up as inflation hit and as DC market expanded. And I sadly had a manager that did not have the finger on the pulse of this. And as people left, who were, again, generally we don't lose people we don't want to lose, but these were people that were not bad. They were solid, that we didn't adjust compensation. And I think that, it is a twofold piece where in a perfect world, you would have some excess capacity. It's going to hurt a little bit on the bottom line, but it makes you stable. And so I always say history is written by the victors. If there's no turnover, yeah, you're fine with no excess staff, but that's part of life. That's why what we do, the lot we've chosen in life to staff a law firm with human capital means that there is going to be life events, sicknesses, people decide they want to do something else in life, whatever. And then if you don't have a little bit of fat there, it can be really painful at that point. And I've also seen, we started, as you met me when I was like young 40s, and now early 50s. The fact that the energy that it takes and the personal investment on our part as owners to jump in, so that when you're younger and a little more agile, having a little bit less depth, okay. But I feel like as it gets expanded, if you don't have that, then it takes a toll on you. And now that you have 4 kids and they actually need you for different things and you want to be at different things, that pull and tug becomes more significant.
It does, and one of the things that even happened for us recently is we had a receptionist team, an overseas talent that was focusing as our first on phones, and then being the traffic cop, directing them to the intake team or to the legal ops team, depending on what they needed. We got to a point where the phones were ringing 3 times instead of 2, and they were managing it. But I said, let's just add another receptionist person. For what it's going to cost. And they're like, well, we don't make any money back on that. That's just money out the door, because it's not like a receptionist. And I said, no.
I would argue that I don't call it intake. Every dollar you spend on intake makes you more money, whether it's saving on your, if you're using an answering service, it's several dollars a minute, or whether it's getting better conversion when you build that up. To me, that's why I was crazy and built a team of 13, 15 people, is that I find that with each person, I'm squeezing more out of those oranges. Now, there's probably a point of diminishing returns. You can get too crazy on it, but most people, I would say if there's a place to invest that you will see a solid ROI, it would be increasing capacity there.
So let me ask you a question then about intake, or whatever you want to call it, the people who pick up the phone when it first rings in. We had an issue this past weekend where we had a PI lead come in Saturday afternoon, and 15 minutes passed by the time we were able to get the lead to somebody, and they had already signed with another lawyer. It was one of those things. So let me ask you, I'm going to lose some people like that. I know I am. But my question is, and I posted in one of the forums, how are you staffing intake on the weekends? Is it rolling to an answering service? Do you have people on your team that are calling?
It's a very apropos question, because we do staff it. And part of the reason we lost our domestic 4 people that I didn't want to lose was we were forcing them to do those shifts. So there is not an easy answer. That's one of the reasons I'm glad to the international. God forbid our manager had made that shift, as I asked him several months ago, before we burnt people out. But given the current job market, historically, we could get people to do 2 weekend shifts a month They liked the overtime, it was part of my package, and it was fine. The problem is right now the economy is so hot, they can get a Monday through Friday job, no weekends, and it burns them out. So I think that the international piece, huge as a step towards solving this, because if you have people who are answering it and can get a hold of you, that's 90% of it. But I think that the idea of just forcing your regular U.S. domestic team in this market to cover your weekends, I know you posted that on Max Law the other day, I think that's at your peril. You're going to burn people out and you're going to end up with real problems.
Well, that's what I was afraid of. And let me tell you how we solved it. We have 6 or 7 on our overseas people on our intake team, and so we actually went to them in a meeting and we said, look, we're thinking about changing up schedules. Does anybody have the ability to add a weekend day and lose 2 weekday days? And so what we did is we made the people who work out over the weekends, somebody works Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and somebody works Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So they have an overlapping day of Wednesday. And so now they work a 4-day work week rather than a 5-day week. So they're getting 3 days off.
That's a whole other cause celeb that a couple companies have moved towards. Look, the answer is however the puzzle works best for you, God bless. But what I'll tell you is my lesson learned that I hope I could share with you is the market is hot enough that if you're forcing your solid domestic labor to work weekends, there's a good chance you're going to lose somebody given how many people are out there soliciting your employees to come join them.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a real risk. And I think it's important for us, generally speaking, if you're going to start scaling, is to identify these things that you can work on that other lawyers aren't able to give. And being staffed, having your intake staffed with people not who can just take a message and book a call for Monday, but people who can process the intake and have it either sold and ready to go. I think that's important.
Or it's triage. It's all you need is a triage. If somebody's on call, that's fine. But you need to make sure that you're not making somebody, again, before they just schlep to the office. Good thing about COVID is they can work from anywhere. But I think that it's a question of figuring out how to screen the stuff quickly. I mean, it'd be great to get to the point where there's a full-time person. You've done that over time. Doesn't always last that long, in which case you have to rebuild. So I've had moments of my firm where we've had we've had a guy who wants to work Saturdays, wants to work Sundays, great. But when you don't, I mean, we did not watch what was going on, and we had some turnover because of it.
Yeah, we had pre-COVID, we had somebody who worked weekends for us steadily, and he was a grinder and reliable, and then that lost. We actually went with Sandy Van's company for a while, had somebody working weekends for us doing intake, and then our intakes dropped because of the problems that we've had recently. We got rid of that position because it just wasn't financially worth it to us. And then this past weekend, I think we lost like $50,000 worth of business. And so, we said, okay, we got, especially for us being DUI lawyers, criminal lawyers, going into the holiday season, we need to be staffed intake 7 days a week with our own people so that we can stay on top of these things. And luckily, my team figured out a way to step up and make it happen. But what I'm saying is, be creative, I think is the takeaway, and make sure that you are there to answer the phone when people call to have cases for you to sign. And maybe there's a service out there. Gary has ICE, and there's other opportunities. Oh, there's Smith,
there's no shortage.
There's Ruby. There's no shortage of those.
Right, and there are 2 different levels. There's the higher level, meaning the ones that come with some form of customer service that can close and sign clients and have a better level. And then there's the cheaper, make sure the phone is answered. And that's probably a show for another day where we discuss pros and cons of 80 cents a minute versus $2.50 a minute.
Yeah, I mean, these are the challenges, though, as you try to grow your firm. You need to contemplate all these things. And since both of us have been there, I think it's important for us to be able to
just put it on our list for a future show, like where and when each of those are appropriate.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Last topic then. This is the one.
I'm going to reframe the topic. We're talking SEO, right? So Jim posted. I don't know if it was in the big group or the small group, but he posted an article from over the summer. It was, I think, above the law. and it was a salacious headline that Jim Boykin, who's one of the legendary figures in the SEO space and most colorful, he had been a guest on the SEO Insider. I don't know if we simulcast it on this group, but I'm happy to do it. Really fascinating guy. The headline basically says, are scholarship links dead? Is it third rail? Is Google penalizing them? And if you read the article, it's very unclear what exactly the issue was. There was one client of Jim's that had some sort of penalty from a page that had scholarships on them. It was very vague, but I'm going to take a step back from this and talk more generally about link building, which is an essential part of SEO, and scholarships are one of the sort of tricks, so to speak, of scaling .edu links. So the idea is, when in building authority to a website, you're trying to show the ecosystem that you live in. You want to show that you're an authority for what you do. Why is Jay Ruane the DUI guy and not some kid a year out of law school living in his parents' basement? And Google wished we lived in a linkless society, because if we did, then we wouldn't have people manipulating, with links to try to move the needle when maybe they aren't as authoritative as Jay Ruane. What was sort of discussed here and what's happened is, one of the things that lawyers do generally, some because they want to give back to the community, and some because they want to link build, and some because of both, was putting scholarships out, and then those scholarships are referenced on different university websites. Universities are absurdly expensive. I hear now friends' kids at like tier 2, 3 schools are paying $80,000 a year. So the schools are looking for any way to defer those numbers, and they have scholarships all over the place. There's no shortage of scholarships out there, and that law firms and savvy SEOs have gotten into the game of saying, okay, let's put a scholarship out there, and if we get these universities to list this as a viable scholarship and link to it, that's a backlink. And I think that I bring things back to the don't get greedy world, in that if you go back over the years of SEO and time when I met you, really spammy links worked, like posting in forums online, in blog forums. If you remember this time, where if you posted in a blog, it was a blog, and you wrote on that authoritative blog a response to somebody, and you put the keywords Connecticut DUI lawyer, that link was really valuable, and it made a huge difference. And Google said, hey, this is getting abusive. The web is becoming literally a cesspool because of all these negative links coming in, and they slammed everybody who did this. The next wave came with guest blogging. And I remember this distinctly, because guest blogging is, let's say that the Max Law blog, if it exists, was going to have an article by Jay Ruane, and the Jay Ruane article links back to his website. That's a valid backlink. But like most good things, the reason we can't have nice things, as Nalini would say, is that people abuse this, and they started basically a complete free-for-all for guest blogging. And I remember Matt Cutts, when he was the spam guy for Google, he said, it's not that guest blogging is bad and that it's detrimental. It's bad guest blogging, where it's like completely irrelevant. If you're writing an article for NCDD and you put it on their site, that's a good thing. And the fact that it links back to you, that's fine. What you don't want is irrelevant ones. What's happened, I think, with the scholarship piece is that it's gotten more prolific. And it's not just law firms doing it. You have gambling sites, you have weed companies, you have all these people that are putting them out in a very spammy way. It's not the Jay Ruane scholarship. It's it is a gambling exact match domain scholarship, which is just cringe, and it becomes to add that cesspool level. So like most things, not to be abused. Should you stop giving scholarships? I say no. I think this was a scare tactic, and that if done properly, I'm not saying they're hugely valuable. It may be that Google's onto this and says, hey, we're going to discount all of these pages with all of these different links coming. Sure. It's not like it's not like this is some panacea that's going to make or break you. But the scare tactic of an article with that headline seems to be overstated. This was, this was out there as a sort of like, hey, it got people talking about it. Look, got posts, it did its job by us having this here. So I'm not saying to be blind to it. If you continue to do good things and receive digital PR, in a positive sense from relevant places. To me, that is always going to be good as long as links are accounted for. It's when you start to abuse that and go steps beyond what is reasonable. If somebody looks at that and says, yeah, this is complete nonsense, yeah. But if you have, if Jim Hacking wants a scholarship for immigrants and it's from the heart, it's for a meaningful amount of money, and universities link to that, again, it may at some point not have value if Google's going to say, hey, there are too many links on this page coming outbound, or we're just going to stop the game. But is this really being penalized? I'm suspicious about that one-off and piece in the story, but it's a cautionary tale. Do not get greedy. Do not get abusive. Do things within reason that are relevant to the world that you live within.
Awesome. Great information there about scholarships. What we're going to do is we're going to take another quick break, and we'll be back with more Maximum Growth Live.
Hi, I'm Jay from FirmFlex, and I want to let you in on a foolproof way to drive viable clients to your door via social media, using a social funnel. You see, social media is a different type of marketing, and using the wrong methods won't land you clients. It will turn people off to your brand. But there's a way to get those clients to opt in, learn more about you, learn why you are great, and then want to contact you, whether you handle trust and estates, or family law, or personal injury, or any other type of law. And that's using a multiple-stepped funnel that delivers the right message at the right time. You can get that message with a FirmFlex social funnel. A FirmFlex social funnel is the way to drive qualified leads into your client base. Our funnel program gives you the ultimate control over your new client funnel. We design, implement, and set up all the triggers for a multi-step funnel, bringing attention to your brand and slowly warming potential clients from cold to red hot and ready to engage. And the best part is, you can start the whole process right online. Visit getfirmflex.com today.
In this world today, if you want to grow your business, you want to grow your firm, you want to take on more cases and make a bigger impact, you have to have a digital blueprint. Statistically, throughout the time that we've been working with Blue Shark Digital, our law firm, the Atlanta Divorce Law Group, grew over 1,400%. They truly understand where we're headed and how we want to get there. I have a team in Blue Shark Digital that I feel like has my back.
And we're back with Maximum Growth Live. And Seth, the last thing I want to question you about, because you've got two operations, I just really have one. I mean, FirmFlex is a lot smaller, but holiday parties. You know, I got some friends at the restaurant next door, and they say they're starting to pack up. Usually they are all booked by now, but they think that they'll all be booked by the end of this week. How are your firms and operations handling holiday parties? Because there's still some trepidation. There's still, do we go out?
I hear you. No, it's the question of the day. So Blue Shark has a new clubhouse, which has outdoor space, and like we had an event there with masks. There was food, so it's not perfect. I think practically everybody's vaccinated. That crowd seemed pretty self-controlled. The law firm is a much more diverse population. I snuck in a final significant shindig, a roof deck event, spent way too much on a minimum. It was Halloween weekend, Thursday, did not get the turnout I would have loved, but it was outdoors. So it was nice. It was safe. Everybody could be there. We're talking about a December holiday party. Indoors. It makes me nervous, talk of Delta, see what's going on in Europe. I think that the good news is it's with my pool tennis club. So there's very little buy-in. The minimum is not there. The food doesn't have to be locked in until the last minute. And so that if for some reason we have to audible out, that's there. But I feel it's important. I mean, we started the first part of the show talking about keeping these connections. It's so valuable. Our holiday party is so central to the year that do you push it? And our new firm administrator just said, vaccination or, COVID test. The question is, are you going to require that to be shown? Are you going to require it to be proof to get in? Like where do you take it? It's an honor system. If somebody isn't vaccinated, are they really going to show you, are they really going to go out and get a test before your party? it is definitely a great deal of angst. Love to hear what other people are doing. I think smaller operations have it easier, but as you scale, there are a lot of constituents out there, and you certainly don't want to be a super spreader event. That said, the last few conferences that have required vaccinations and or tests before have not heard any anecdotal information of anybody getting it. Where pre that, during the height of Delta, AAJ in Vegas saw significant numbers. When I say significant, like meaningful anecdotal numbers of people getting it. Seen a lot of bar and bat mitzvahs in our area start to go indoors. Nobody's reported any issues. And frankly, now that we're triple vaxxed and the young ones over 5 or have their first vaccine, feeling more emboldened. Is that a false sense of security? I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I spent this weekend at a bunch of events. I was on the floor at Madison Square Garden for a Dave Matthews concert, and around me, I saw like a half a dozen people wearing masks. Everybody else was maskless. You had to show your vaccine card to get in. Jets game. I don't think I saw a single mask. I mean, we're Jets fans, so we're sort of used to being, the sky is falling. Might as well just accept it. But I think
I'll tell you, outdoors, I saw that at FedEx Field, no masks at all, except on the concourse. When I went to the hockey game, the indoor arenas are still doing, because I think the hockey and basketball guys are like, look, they shut us down. If this spikes, they take away our ability to sell seats, and that killed them. They were playing without spectators for the longest time, and then percentages of the arena. So it's interesting, depending on the economic incentives of the organization, how that's being enforced.
Well, and then so you need to then think about it depending on the economic incentives. And here's a question I have for you. How do you involve your overseas talent in a holiday event so as to not make them feel excluded, because you want them to feel part of the team? So that's the question I have for you. I mean, I've now got 10 overseas people that are actively part of our organization. If we have an event and say, well, you can come to it if you're in Connecticut, get the majority of lawyers and in-office staff, but then what do the VAs get? What do the overseas people get? You don't want to exclude them.
Well, you are by definition. The question is, Price Benowitz flying in lawyers from South Carolina, flying in our recruiter from Florida. Blue Shark flies in its non-local people that are domestic. I think that if we want to be serious about the international component, that we are going to have to figure stuff out. Blue Shark did a pretty good job during COVID with online games. And I feel like that, we saw that in the height of COVID, we did some online activities that were halfway decent. We did a comedian. I think that hat tip to Ryan McKean on that one. And the problem is you can't really do a comedian for an international audience. It's much, much harder. So the question is, I think that if we go to our playbook of what we looked at during COVID for entertainment, and that I think that that doing something where you budget something for each person, it won't take a hell of a lot to have a meaningful, what would it cost for each person to bring dinner home that's special with something, and to sit around with family members in some sort of group dynamic with some sort of presentation and or entertainment or whatever, that you take a shot. I don't think it's going to be ideal, but I wonder if the 15.5 people have any thoughts on that. They've done such a good job with their SaaS-based operation, but we'll leave that out. Maybe that should be our mission, which is we saw what people did during COVID domestically, but as we build these international teams, what are some of the things that would be meaningful to give touch points? Because it's not even an option for most people getting to the United States, even if money was not an option.
Right.
I would love to be able to do something meaningful and entertaining.
All right, folks. So that's our question for you. If you have overseas talent, if you have a predominantly remote workforce, how are you doing something to sort of keep them together at this time during the holidays and sort of had a firm holiday event? We'd love to hear from you. Please, if you're watching this, make a note in the comments section. Let us know any suggestions that you might have for this issue that Seth and I are truly struggling with as we go forward over the last 6 weeks of the year. But that's going to do it for this week for our show, Maximum Growth Live. Of course, if you want to stay up to date with everything that Seth is doing, please follow his SEO Insider. Mentioned it a couple times during the show. There's some good content on there if you want to learn more about digital marketing. And I think it's incumbent upon all lawyers to know enough about digital marketing that they can make the right choices, know when someone's selling smoke, know when someone's doing the right thing. Because if you don't have that knowledge, you're really just throwing money at a problem, and throwing money at a problem doesn't necessarily solve it. It just kicks it down the line for another day. Of course, if you want to keep up with me, you can join my Systemizing Your Law Firm for Growth Facebook group. I put out systems every week. The leads down triage list got a lot of downloads in the last week. So if that's something that interests you, please join us. Of course, you can catch us every week here syndicated on the Maximum Lawyer podcast. We are available wherever podcasts are found: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. But that's going to do it for us here. Seth, any parting words?
No, just a lot of challenges, a lot of obstacles. Keep it up, and hopefully hear from some of you guys with some inspiring ideas on how to overcome these.
I love it, Seth. Okay, so folks, that's going to do it for us for now. Have a great week. We'll see you next Thursday here on Maximum Growth Live. Bye for now.